Thank you, Mr. Hoffman, for sharing your views. I think you've highlighted that in the coming years, the demand for infrastructure will be very significant. And it is very important that we are able to look for solutions that are sustainable both environmentally as well as financially. And I think many governments around the world will be looking for different ways to finance all these projects that will be coming up. And there certainly will be scope to look for innovative financing solutions to some of these projects that are coming up. Okay, I think all our panel members have had the chance to make their opening statement. I'm going to do a bit of a change of plan here. I intended to ask each of them one follow-up question, but I'm very conscious about the time. And I think it will be more useful if we have a dialogue and we open the session to the floor so that any one of you, if you have a question, please feel free to ask. We also have this feature called a pigeonhole where participants can post questions online. But I will give preference to the delegates here today who are prepared to come forward to the mic and ask the question. So when you come forward, please give us your name, where you come from, and the organization you're from, and then post the question. Thank you.
My name is Pierre Lacomte, the Foundation for the Urban Environment in Brussels, Belgium. My question is to Bert Hoffman. You said that carbon needs to be priced. That is, of course, something that you cannot disagree with. So my question to you is, how can the World Bank either advise or help in any way the countries to become aware, notwithstanding the political difficulties, that there is a need for that? The European Union has tried to introduce carbon taxation. It has not succeeded. Then it has tried the emissions trading system, which has not succeeded either. Now it is trying to have the emissions obligations for the airline industries. It's maybe going to be successful, but it's not sure yet. So the question to you is, as with your experience of the World Bank, and I'm very pleased to see that you are representing the pro-transit element of the World Bank, what is your opinion? Thank you.
All right, shall I take that? Well, thank you. It's frankly also inside the World Bank, it is hotly debated whether and how we should put a price on carbon. Of course, there's the global negotiations going on, and we hope that at some point there will be an agreement which will have an implication of a price for carbon, irrespective of whether that's going to be through tax or through global permits and trading. Economists like cap and trade because it's so efficient, but it's also very hard to actually agree on, apparently. But what I find more encouraging is that a lot of countries have tried, not just Europe, have tried and to some extent succeeded. Europe had its disadvantages in introducing this system as well. My country actually had a carbon tax. I don't know whether they still have it. But you see increasingly other countries starting to adopt similar systems as well. China has an experimental cap and trade system working as we speak. Carbon tax in Australia has been introduced. Korea is looking at the similar systems. So you find countries that voluntarily already constrain their behavior. Maybe in anticipation of, in the end, a future deal. And that may very well be the case. But it also makes perfect sense, because then you say, well, we might as well start pricing carbon better now, so that the investments we put in place now will be still efficient when that price actually comes. So that's the philosophy. I do think it depends to some extent on the credibility of the global negotiations, but to some extent also if you want, on individual initiatives in countries. And thirdly, I believe, and that's where we do something, in directing financial flows to countries that do the right thing. They may not explicitly price carbon, but we do have financial flows, very concessional financial flows, for countries that do try to find a low carbon path that may not be enforced through a carbon tax or cap and trade, but that's what we try to reward. And we have not limited, quite considerable means to our availability, and hopefully these means will increase. Currently the donor funded, so developed countries put money in the World Bank. in order to finance low-carbon technologies in transport, but not just in mainly transport and energy, but not just that. So there were a number of things underway which I think start to play around with that notion. It is not yet mainstreamed, it is not yet broad-based, but I'm encouraged that both from developed and developing countries, there's quite a bit of enthusiasm for that.
Hi, I'm Paul Bevan from Eurocities, the network of European big cities. I regret we've heard much more about transport than we have about mobility in this session. In particular, it struck me as remarkable that I've seen not a single bicycle in Singapore. It's one of the questions on the pigeonhole. And I thought you might want not to answer it, so I thought I'd ask it direct.
Well, actually, if I can just share in terms of mobility in Singapore, what the Land Transport Authority in Singapore tries to do is to aim to provide a whole range of mobility options. So it's not just about owning a car, it's not just about taking public transport, about taking the train, but all the different options in between, including walking, taxis, and including bicycles. So what we do in Singapore is we are starting to, with the idea of having bicycles as the final link connecting to the trunk transit route along the MRT lines in Singapore, and we are creating where we can and where space permits bicycle paths in our towns. And we're going to increasingly do that in more and more towns in Singapore. And also we have this vision that one day we may want to connect up all the paths so that it's easier to get from one place in Singapore to another if you choose to cycle. And sometimes there may be certain opportunities that open up to us in terms of a longer bicycle path. For example, if we have this corridor down the middle of Singapore from the north to south that was vacated by the Malayan railway line. I mean, there is an opportunity to explore whether we could actually have some bicycle path there as well. And I suppose what I can tell you also is that in the Land Transport Authority in Singapore, we actually look at this issue of cycling very seriously. And just this past year, I appointed one of my senior management colleagues as the cycling champion. Actually, you may be glad to know that he's actually sitting right here in the middle. You can have a word with him about and some of your ideas as well. So we are quite serious about it. There may not be that many bicycles in Singapore today. There may not be that many as many bicycles as there were in China in the 70s or 80s. But I think that Singapore will become a more conducive place for cyclists in the coming years.
Good afternoon, Lord Mayor Stephen Yarwood from the City of Adelaide in Australia. I just wanted to note I didn't hear much about integrated transport, so I appreciate that last comment. I think the integration of transport will be the key. Also, I agree. I believe that cities throughout the world will very soon be competing for bragging rights as leading cycling cities. I think this is going to be the fastest growing mode of transport in cities throughout the world. And I'd in fact invite people to come to Adelaide in 2014 for the Global Velo City Cycling Conference, where we've been fortunate enough to win that conference. So we hope to see you there. But my question is about electric cars and electric vehicles. I'm an electric car driver, and frankly, once you've driven an electric car, you will never, ever go back. They are absolutely magnificent vehicles. But I'm curious about, just as petrol-driven engines have defined cities in the 20th century, what's going to happen in the 21st century when it costs 3 cents per kilometre to drive an electric car or 10 cents per kilometre to ride an e-bike? Electric bikes are going to absolutely transform our cities, and I'm curious as to whether you are planning a future where petrol-driven engines are literally dinosaurs.
Thank you for your question. Is your question specifically for Singapore or is it more about electric car?
The source of energy in China, 70% of the source of energy is from the coal burning. So even electrical car cannot contribute to environmental problem, and also cannot contribute to congestion. So maybe electrical bike can be some degree of the contribution.
Looking at the possibility of not only encouraging our operators to use electric bus, but also creating a new industry in terms of really looking through the value chain of an electric bus, where we can grow our own domestic industry. But in terms of putting it into operations, currently, when we explored last, an electric bus costs about 3 times more than normal bus, diesel bus. So in a country where basic transportation needs, is a problem. So this is the dilemma that we are facing, whether we start with the e-bus investment now and deny 2/3 of the other people service, or do we just go conventional and serve as many as we can? This is a bit of a challenge that we are sorting through.
Yes, maybe a comment. I think indeed electric cars are nice. They will help solving some of the environmental problem that electric cars are, that normal cars of today are causing. But let me tell first that a green traffic jam is still a traffic jam. And so it will not solve the congestion stuff. From what I heard from the car industry, the most optimistic people believe that it will not grow as much as 10% of the total car fleet, even the one that are pushing as much as possible for the electric car. It would be great. I mean, it's much better to have electric car than a fossil car, so there's no dispute about this. I think the public transport industry needs also to make its own work and transform most of the buses into electromobility. Electromobility in Europe is really a hit now, and a country like Germany is trying to convert all public transport to electromobility. But I'm afraid it will not save the car industry. And I was reading recently a special supplement in the Financial Times of London about the future of car industry. And obviously they're investing a lot of research because they are very worried about the future of the car industry model of today. Chief strategist of GM and the big group is just wondering how they will survive to the congestion, because it's not the car in itself which is a problem, it's the accumulation of car in the city. And today they realize in the car industry that people are leaving the car model just because queuing for 1.5 hours every day or more is no longer acceptable. So they're looking to make smaller car, electric driven, all those, but still, as I said, a traffic jam, a green traffic jam is still a traffic jam.
I would like to share with you a comment on the technology and the design of the city. Even if we improve the quality of the buses, the quality of the trains, the quality of the car, at the end of the day, you need to connect human people, physical space, and you need to share this space. We should consider long-distance connectivity, which is very easy to solve, very easy, particularly along corridors. Public transportation system can really help a lot, but the most difficult part of urban design is the last 10 minutes, the last kilometers. How you connect with your final destination. So intermodality is very important. And urban design is key. In the industrial economy, price of the land, the good connectivity between companies was key for competitiveness of the city. In the knowledge economy, quality of place is the key, because which is really mobile is the talent. Talent is mobile. They can live wherever they want. And if we are competing for attracting talent, we are competing at the end of the day for improving the quality of place. So designing a place for human interaction, quality of public space, which is the most democratic part of the city, and how to combine technology with people. This is something that we need to think a lot in this point. So micromobility is important. In our foundation, we began 5 years ago to create new urban infrastructure. Instead of having roads coming to the city, transforming these old motorways, or urban motorways, into eco-boulevards. Eco-boulevards require having not only cars, but also public transportation, green line, cycling, pedestrian, and urban intensity along this corridor. We developed one in Casablanca that can be extended between Casablanca and Rabat, but in the future, the city of the future, probably motorways will become eco-boulevards. And I think it's a great debate, not only about technology on cost, but about the kind of city we would like to have and how people will interact with the city and with the transportation system.
Yes, indeed, at the end of the day, it's about the kind of city that we want to have and the kind of city that we want to live in. So I'm very conscious about the time, but can we just, if there are one or two more questions, we can try and take them, and then we can try and wrap up the session. I see one hand, there's another one. Maybe we just take one final question and then we...
Hi, Robin Rajak of the World Bank in Washington. It seemed that most of the discussion on mobility was around the carbon footprint of transportation infrastructure. I just wondered if any of the panelists would like to comment on mobility from the perspective of connecting the poor, living in locations where the land price is not subsidized, but still having good access to where the jobs are. We've seen experiments with it being the other way around, where land price is subsidized, and eventually the poor basically cash in that subsidy. So any perspective of it the other way around, perhaps even with transport subsidies to allow the poor to live in unsubsidized land and still have access to jobs?
Can you phrase that question? Can you phrase your question again? So you are saying that...
I'm sorry, I just wondered if anyone could comment on mobility from the perspective of it serving the function of connecting the poor while they live in land that is unsubsidized, which may often mean further out, rather than subsidizing the land and then they just cash it in and move to somewhere else.
One of the role of public transport is indeed what we call, I don't know whether the word exists in English, inclusion, social inclusion. It means today in our society, if you cannot move, you're kind of a dead citizen. So you have to move, to be able to move, to do what? Because unfortunately urban planning has not been properly made, so that generally you don't live close to your job or close to your school for most people. And you need to move, and public transport provides you with that. Now, it may be strange that in cities like Paris, land is very expensive in the center of Paris and inexpensive at 80 kilometers from Paris. So at the beginning, when the fare structure was built, the idea was, yeah, but the poor guy that needs to live away from 80 kilometers from Paris would even pay much more in terms of public transport. So what happened is the fare structure was changed so as to make sure that proportionally the people living 80 kilometers from Paris would pay more per kilometer than a guy living in Paris. It sounds like a strange system, which is not distance-based, but there was some sort of attempt to reduce the social gap by making public transport available. Now, there's even a country, this is mine, which has been totally crazy. Instead of going into density of city, They love urban sprawl to that extent that people now can buy at 50 kilometers from the capital city, they can buy cheap land. And the state is subsidizing fully with the employer, fully the transportation. That may look great, but in fact, people commuting every day by 100 kilometers don't have a good life. And I don't think this is the right solution, to have all the taxpayers subsidizing the transportation, having the life of those guys terrible because it's at least 2 hours of commuting in each direction, and having employee exhausted when they arrive at the office. But that's an employer who's speaking.
Okay. Well, in view of the time, I have to close this session, but actually we have covered quite a few issues ranging from public transport to planning for mega region, to planning for specific cities like Shanghai, KL, and the various financing arrangements that are possible. And it remains really for me to thank my panel members for their sharing of their experience and their insights and ideas, and to thank all of you for being here today to be part of this discussion forum. Thank you very much.